Okay, right. Okay, so I'm just going to recap then on the thing that Lindsay mentioned about opening a picture, but I'm just going to speak a bit more about cloning tonight, and also something called Smart Fill, which is actually something I use quite a lot. I'm going to talk about filters, which apply kind of affects your photos, and including camera raw and smart filters, which kind of, and then we'll talk a bit more about adjustment layers, using brushes, and also again making selections and saving selections and creating layers from selections and that sort of stuff. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah.
Froze for the last 30 seconds.
You missed the last 30 seconds. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, it all stalled.
You froze.
Okay. So basically, yeah, I don't know. So what I've just talked about, what I'm going to talk about. So cloning, filters, adjustment layers, brushes, straightening. I think I mentioned straightening last time. Smart objects and saving selections for future use. Did everyone get that?
Oh, right. Okay, good.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Let me begin. Okay, I'm going to talk a bit more in depth about cloning. I know you've all probably played around with cloning, but I find I'm going to actually open a really challenging real photo that I had to do a lot of cloning on this week, and just show you a couple of the steps that I took to do the cloning. So let me open that for you now. I'll come back to you in 1 second. Okay, so I'm going to start to share my Photoshop screen with you. Give me 1 sec. Okay, so you're all on the right hand side of the video. So I'm going to minimize everybody. Okay, so yeah, you should only. Can you now not? I don't know what you can see, but I've minimized everyone so I can see. So this is quite a challenging photo, and not challenging photo, but you know, I decided to clone out. I'm not going to do it all again, but I decided to clone out all of these wires. Okay, and where it becomes a challenge is where you're trying to zoom in. What's happening? Okay. Like getting the edges straight and all this sort of stuff. So let me just go through some very quick tips that you can use to clone along straight edges and things like this. So again, all of this stuff always requires quite a bit of patience, but I'm going to do a quick version to help us along. So let's say we want. So this actually is quite easy one to do. All I would do here is I would take my cloning tool. I'm going to choose the one where so that's that one. Remember I'm sampling all layers. So I'm actually, let me do layer, new layer. Okay. So some people I think sometimes struggle with not having all layers. So you can, current layer, I would just be sampling a blank layer, so that wouldn't work. So make sure you're sampling all layers. And for this, that's weird, that's my last photo. Okay. All I'm going to do is Alt, click, and okay. So what I was playing around before, and I was rotating my tool, which is now really not helping me out at all. So let's put that back to. Okay, so it's actually, okay. Okay, so that's back to normal. Okay, so, okay, I'm going to show you how to do it in a minute. Okay, so Alt click, and then, you know, this is actually a dead easy thing to clone out. Okay, so that, did you see what I did? I aligned that layer, but another way that I could do that, if I wanted to, if like this is a bit more tricky because it's a bigger piece of thing to do, what I would do for this is I would take, let's move me out of the way, polygonal lasso, and I would make a very quick selection around that. Yeah, and then my cloning now, I'm going to choose my thing, but now all my, okay, so actually, and what I'm also going to do, you can change your mode of cloning from normal, which kind of tries to blend it, to replace. So sometimes I change to replace, and that takes a direct replacement. It doesn't try and match anything. It totally copies the thing from here. So I might actually do that for this bit where it's totally kind of painting out. But you can see my changes are only applying within my selection. So that lets me make a nice, easy straight line by making that selection first on this layer. Yeah. So remember, you've got replace and normal. Normal is more of a trying to blend it, and replace is a direct replacement of the thing that you're trying to clone out. Okay. Right. So we can undo that. So I did in the final picture manage to clone out all this stuff quite successfully. Something that you sometimes want to do if you're trying to go around the edge of a curved shape, sometimes you can rotate your cloning tool. So I'll show you now. If I make this, so if I, let's say, I don't know, for some reason we wanted to put this wire in at a different angle somewhere, we can Alt and click and take, so you can see what I'm doing. And now if I hold on my Mac, Alt, Shift, and it's like the pointy left bracket symbol, you can see I'm rotating it. Yeah, so I can, if I keep pressing it, it's quite a slow process. So you can rotate the thing that you've cloned to, you know, if you're trying to match, say you're trying to do something, I don't know, around the edge of someone's chin or something like this, you know, you're trying to match up, you know, going around a curve or something, you can rotate the thing that you've cloned by pressing Alt Shift on a Mac. And it's not the arrow keys. I'll show you, and I'll send you the symbol. It's the one where it's like the triangular shaped arrow with a point, not arrow, triangular shaped bracket with a point, if you know what I mean. So you can rotate the thing that you're cloning. So that's quite useful sometimes. So let's put it back to normal. Okay. So the two extra things there to learn about cloning are really that you can switch between replace and normal. Replace is a direct replacement, and normal is more of the usual cloning. You can play around with, another thing that's kind of useful is also if you go to darken or lighten. So sometimes, you know, you've done something and you have got like a black or a white line around something you want to get with. Let me choose the lighten option. What that actually does is it just takes out dark pixels. Yeah, so it only works on pixels that are darker than the area that you've chosen. So in this instance, yeah, this would be working anyway, but it's not actually changing the lighter pixels here. This is only changing any pixels that are darker than my clone source. So that's quite a handy thing to do. Yeah. So just think about how you could potentially use that. Okay. Now, what else do we need to do? Okay, so that's a bit more about cloning. So remember, you try and use the different modes. You've got normal, replace, darken, and lighten. Okay. And yeah, and remember you can rotate it, and remember just, you know, and to make selections around the edges of things when you are trying to find edges properly. Okay. Now let's talk about something called Smart Fill, which is kind of quite interesting. Let's see if there's an area in this image where I could use. Okay, so here's a very simple area. So maybe I want, let's say, I mean, I know this is very easy to clone out anyway, but I can use something called Smart Fill, and I need to actually do it on a layer with some information in it. So let's go layer, duplicate layer. So let me make a simple selection around this picture that's here. Okay, and then I can go edit, fill. I can go content aware fill. Okay, so that should magically, let's see if it works. That's just magically filled that. Do you see what I mean? So I didn't do that. The computer just decided that that was how it was going to fill it. We can that was a really simple example of it, but it can work really well on, I don't know, things that you're struggling to fill. Let's do something. Let's see if this will work. Let's undo that selection. Let's see if let me see if we could get rid of this whole window area. So I've not actually tried this. So let's make a selection of this entire window area. Let's go a bit. My internet is some reason playing up. I don't know why, but I'll come back. Okay. Let's just go. Sorry, just take a little bit of time to get this right. Okay. Okay, so let's say we now have selected. Yeah, okay, a little bit more. A little bit more. This is quite a challenge for Photoshop, but will it, if I pick that bit as well? Okay, so, okay, we've kind of got everything. Okay, so I'm going to see if Photoshop will fill that automatically. Anyway, so edit, fill, content aware. Let's see what happens. Probably break the internet, but there you go. So my Mac is quite, okay. So there's the example of when it doesn't work, okay? But sometimes, okay, I'm gonna do a different way. Edit, you can do it this way. Edit content aware fill, and you can tell it which areas to sample from. So in this instance, I'm going to tell it to just choose from the kind of wall type areas, yeah? So I'll go, let's go see if that works. Okay.
Okay.
Whoops. So, actually, okay, so I should have made a bigger select, but it did a better job there. Do you see what I mean? So I can work, I probably should have selected just outside the area because I've kept a bit of the brown. But that was, so there's two ways to do content aware fill. The very quick way, which is edit, content aware fill, which I can't see now. Okay, it's not, okay, I haven't got the options because it's not, I've not got a selection at the moment, but if I make a selection. So you have to have made a selection on a layer with information, edit, content, so fill and content aware, we'll kind of do a quick job, or if you want to tell it what the areas to select from, you can do it like that. So you can go edit and choose the other option. And, you know, for a fairly complicated thing like that, it's done an okay job of trying to fill it in. Okay, so that's quite an interesting thing to do. Okay. Any questions on that one?
Nope.
I mean, that's actually quite a clever job that it's done of getting rid of that window, to be honest with it.
Very clever.
Okay, so that's content aware fill. So there are some quite funky and clever tools that we can do. Okay, what should we do now? Okay, let's talk about some filters. Okay, so I'm going to go to a different image right now. Let's not do that one. Okay, let's delete all. I was messing around with this before. Let me get rid of all this rubbish. Okay, so this is a picture, a kind of long exposure type shot of Battersea Power Station. So obviously, you know, you're playing around with this. So what I want to do is so one of the things that you can do things that are very similar to Lightroom in Photoshop. So you can do this thing called camera raw filter, which filters are here, filter. So filters are kind of like changes and effects to apply to the images. So I'm going to go filter, camera raw filter. And when that eventually opens up, okay. And that brings me up a very similar panel. Actually, I'm going to do a new layer. Sorry, first layer, duplicate layer. Okay. So filter, camera raw filter. Okay, and that brings up a very similar panel to what you might have seen in Lightroom. So I can just easily do exposure, clarity. So it's applying it to the whole image. So let's just do some very basic stuff. whatever, vibrance and clarity, just to, okay, so you can, where we can, so that's just, okay. But what happens is that is not now changeable. Like, you know, in Lightroom, you can go back and change stuff and you can readjust stuff. For that filter, that is baked into that layer. I can reapply the filter to that layer, but it's just going to be adding on more changes. I can't go in and readjust that layer unless I kind of delete the layer and start all over again. So something that is worth doing, if you're going to do, let's delete that layer. Let's go layer, duplicate layer. Okay, so I'm going to convert it for a smart filter, convert for smart. So smart filters creates a smart object. So click filter, create smart filter, and then we're going to, as it says, to enable re-editable smart filters, the selected layer will be converted to a smart object. And when it works through its stuff, okay. Yeah, so it's created what's called a smart layer, and I can then do camera raw filter, make my changes. Well, let's just do clarity again. And I can, you know, I can right click on that little symbol there, because now put a smart filter over the top, right click, and I can, you know, I can go back in and I can re-edit the changes that I've made to it. So if you think you're going to add a filter or make a change to your picture, you can, it's probably worthwhile creating a smart filter so that when you're going through your images, you can go back to certain layers and you can re-edit them rather than having to delete and redo layers. So probably for the camera raw filter, it's probably worth creating a layer which is a smart layer so that you can go back in and make changes to that picture, to that layer again in terms of that sort of thing. Otherwise, if you just apply a filter over a regular layer, you can't go back into it and you can't adjust the layer again. So, but I mean, the downside is that it starts to create a lot of data and a lot of information that, you know, if you're going to save it, you're going to run out of space. But I don't tend to worry about that because storage is quite cheap on your hard drive. So, so yeah, so I definitely recommend doing that process of creating a smart filter, especially for things like the camera raw filter. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Let's look. We talked about camera raw and we talked about, okay, fine. Okay, let's talk about, so this isn't, so there's a lot, I'm going to just talk about one example of, so I'm going to delete that layer. So what we might do is, okay, let's talk about selections and saving selections as well. So say I decide to make a selection of this. Okay, again, I'm going to use my Magic Wand tool because Magic Wand tools tend to be quite good for doing things like the sky. Again, I'm working quite quickly, so my selection is not perfect, but that's not, you know, that's just for the sake of, I don't want you to sit here for 20 minutes to watch me refine a selection. So don't think I'm usually this, well, I usually am probably quite sloppy, but not this sloppy. Okay. Okay, but you know, I'm doing quite an okay job. I'm quite happy with how this is going so far. Okay, so whatever, roughly speaking, we have, yeah, I know this is probably not right all around the cranes and that, but whatever, you know, I would refine around the cranes a bit more carefully and I'll get that with that. Okay, so I've kind of got a selection of the sky there. Okay, so what, as a couple of things I could do, what I might do, because I might be kind of scared to lose that selection at some point, I can right click and I can save that selection and I'm going to call it sky. Okay. And what I might also do in this picture is I could go select, what am I looking for? Inverse, okay. And that now makes a selection, which is everything else that I didn't select in that selection. Okay, so look how it's now switched to the river. So I would then go save selection, whatever, river. Okay, so now actually when I go to channels, I can at any time choose which one of those I want to work with. and I can reactivate it basically. Yeah, at any time. Okay, so I can bring those layers back whenever I want, basically, because they appear in the channels. You just click Command and click, and it kind of, and then go onto your layer, click on your layer. Yeah, and you've automatically re-enabled.
Andrew,
Yeah.
do you realize we cannot see any of the layers on the right side of the screen? We can see just ourselves.
Okay, can you not move those videos of the people yourselves? Because I've minimized you all.
Yeah, you just minimize it.
I've minimized it for the recording, but Esther, for your screen, you can move them videos around yourself, basically.
Yeah, I've done it for me.
Okay.
If you go up to the top right, there's 4 little symbols. You want to choose the left-hand one, which is like a little dash.
Yeah, I think I got it now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, yeah, so, okay, so yeah, you can save selections. Yeah, okay, so right click, save selection, sky, done, okay. And it's going to appear there in your, yeah, and then, okay, fine. So saving selections is a good thing to do. Right, so let's do a couple of things. So because I've got that selection saved, I can go layer, let's go duplicate layer. Okay, and my selection is still there on that layer. And what maybe I'm going to do now, I can create a new layer from my selection. So I can go right click, let's go layer via cut. So I'm just going to make a layer from this. Okay, so now you can see I've created a layer up there, which is just the sky, okay? And then let's go back to, let's reload that. So go back to, yeah, so I've now got, so I've got 2 layers, one which is just the water, and I've got one which is the sky. So let's just, so now I can adjust just the sky. So I could go, so make sure I click on the right. So I made a rookie mistake that even though I've got this layer activated, so I've got this layer visible only, I'm actually active on the layer below, which is kind of like when you start to get really frustrated with things because nothing's happening when you think it should. So let's go make sure we're selecting the sky layer, and let's apply a filter just to the sky, okay? So filter, let's go blur gallery. Which one did I decide to do? I decided to go path blur, I think, so yeah, okay. So path blur lets me kind of draw or play around with these. There's lots of different ways that they work. And we can, yeah, so see how I've introduced extra blur into the sky. Who needs an ND filter when you can do this, okay? So yeah, so I've now put loads of blur in the sky. Looks lovely. Let's click OK. Give it a moment. So, I mean, my Mac is like really brand new, which keeps showing off about, but you know, it does take a while to do this stuff. Okay, so now, right, so now look, we've made a bit of a mess of it because we've got the tower is, because not the tower, battery power station is underneath the layer. So we need to put battery power station on the layer above, so it's showing through, but we still got a mistake because the blur has kind of introduced, you know, parts of the, we could re-show that, but I mean, actually we could bring in the base layer again to kind of hide that. But so can you see what I did when so that's, you can see that the chimneys are kind of misty beneath the blur because the blur layer created, you know, blur, which is going across the tower. So what I'm going to do is actually move it to the top. So now Battersea is on the top layer. Battersea layer is just that layer. So then the sky is then put in behind. So what I would do, I need to fill this area. I mean, I can bring in the bottom layer, which got everything, but that's going to work in this instance, but some photos are not. So what I'll do, I'm going to fill the rest of the sky. I'm basically going to expand the sky. So what we're going to do for that is let's just make a very rough selection with a polygonal lasso tool. So we're going to fill. So we've got that selection. So let's see if Photoshop will be my friend now. And let's go fill, content aware, fill in that area. Please do it well for me. Praying to the gods of Photoshop that this works. Okay, come on. Okay, I mean, that's not that good a job, is it really? But anyway, that's an awful job. Okay, whatever. Okay, well, let's undo. As we know, we can undo everything. Oops. Okay, so we bring that layer back. Okay, so Photoshop is not always that good at everything. Come on, I want to get rid of that. Undo. Undo. Okay, so that didn't work very well, but never fear. Okay, let's deselect. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to use a more traditional method of filling, which is the healing big old. So I'm going to take a big old healing brush tool, and I'm going to put it onto normal mode. We're just gonna. We're just gonna use the old traditional method of filling stuff. Okay, so I'm just basically sampling and then just filling and painting it across, which has actually worked much better than what Photoshop tried to do. So anyway, I won't go on for ages doing that. Okay, but okay. So I filled extra bits of sky and I've left a little bit there. Okay, whatever. But now I've just got those two. And you can see I've filled in the gap behind it. So it's the principle really of thinking of how you're using layers and you're bringing stuff. If I, oops, if I bring that layer below. So can you understand what I'm doing here? So what you're looking at here is this layer. You can see the shape of that layer there on top of Battersea Power Station. But as soon as I bring Battersea Power Station to the top, it sits that bit with the checkerboard bit is transparent, and it sits that on top, and you see this new sky coming through that I messed around with and made more blurry. Okay, can you kind of understand what I did there in principle? So that's the original image, and then so basically I was talking about filters, and I made a selection, and I made a new layer from a selection which was just the sky. And then I applied a filter just to the sky to make the sky more blurry. And then I brought my other selection back into the picture to be on top of it. And so basically, yeah, I put that on top of that to give us that, basically. Does that make sense? That's how you can apply filters to individual layers and then layer things up on top by using your selections and filters and creating layers from selections. That makes sense somehow? Okay.
That might take a bit of practice.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'll write it all down again for you and you can watch the video again, I suppose, but it's actually, this is a little bit about, what I find this stuff is not so much actually the technical aspects. You know how to make a selection. That's quite easy. Yeah. You know how to create a new layer. It's quite easy to create a new layer from a selection. Simply you make a selection, then you right click, and then you create layer either via cutting that selection or copying that section into a new layer. Those technical bits within Photoshop are actually quite easy to do. Once you know about selections, layers, that's actually quite easy. What's actually maybe I found initially starting out was what to do with how to utilize those tools and those abilities to do stuff that's interesting with your pictures. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
And that's a little bit around just this, that's why I keep laboring this point a little bit about, the fact that if I put Battersea Power Station underneath that layer, that's what it looks like. But because Battersea Power Station layer has got transparent pixels in where the sky used to be, because I cut out the sky, made a new layer of the sky. When I bring the sky back on top of it, it totally hides it. But if I put Battersea Power Station layer back up on top of that layer, this bit of the sky is not part of this top layer. The bit of the sky is actually part of the sky layer below, which is showing through because we've got transparent pixels on the top half of the top area of the Battersea Power Station bit. That's kind of actually what I think is useful to learn about in terms of how this is all working. Like I say, the technical bits of doing selections and that is actually not hard, but the kind of concepts and understanding and planning of what you're maybe going to do with that newfound knowledge is the thing to get your head around a little bit. Okay, so that's what I want you to practice, is just, layering, making selections, saving selections. So remember, make a selection, right click, save selection.
Right.
And then you see your selections in your channels, and you can activate it just by clicking on it and then going back to layers. Yeah, and then, yeah, okay. And then you can bring your layers back, basically. Okay, your selections back. Okay. What I want to talk about now then is, there's lots of different adjustment layers. So let's maybe just go to a very simple picture here of, I'm not going to make the selection again, but I just want, so this is the original picture, and so you should now be able to do something like this with a picture. All I wanted to do in this photo, this is actually the original photo. That background is actually that blue. This is the original photo. What I wanted to do was simply to brighten the phone screen. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's you should now find that quite simple, because all that is making a selection, which was very simple using the Magic Wand tool of the phone screen around the finger. Everything there was dead simple. But then all I did once I'd made that selection was once the selection was active, I created a layer, an adjustment layer, by clicking that little symbol. I think I did curves. Yeah, and that, this is going to apply to everything, but that's okay. So, but this, let's get rid of that. I don't want that. Delete layer. So this, you can see when I did that process with the selection active, it created a layer for me with that shape, and I was able to then, I'm just adjusting that patch through there. So I want you to get in the habit of, that's how you make selective adjustments of things. Yeah, you make a selection on a layer which has got information in it, and then you click adjustment layer, create fill adjustment layer, and when you've got a selection active, that automatically creates a mask for you, and you can apply the changes to just that object that you want to do. Okay. Yep.
That was something that I have been able to do.
You have been able to do that?
Yep.
Good. We're getting somewhere. Okay. Now, let me just go through one thing for this evening. What should it be? Okay, here's another guy that I wanted to play around with. So this is kind of maybe just getting into slightly fun stuff. Okay. Right. Something that I do a lot, obviously, is portraits. So I'm just going to talk to you about brushes briefly. So say this guy, this is all purely natural light. Let's go layer, duplicate layer. is brushes. So I'm going to zoom in onto the guy's forehead because it's a bit shiny there, yeah? So there's a bit of shine just because everybody's skin has a bit of shine. And I'm going to show you, so really simple things that you can do with brushes, like if you just want to patch something up. So I would take a brush, which is the brush tool here. You can see on the left, hopefully, me choosing the brush tool. Okay. And I actually have a brush which I saved called Shine Reduction, which is that one. Okay. And you can see that this shine reduction brush is only an opacity of 54, well, I don't know why I chose 54, around 50%, and a flow of around 20%. So the flow means each brush stroke, I would have to do 5, if it was 20%, I'd have to do 5 brush strokes to completely apply the effect of the brush. So each brush stroke only applies 20% of the thing. Okay, and then what I can do with my brushes, I can choose. So these are the colors that I'm going to use. Got some strange sort of brownish colors, but what I'm going to do is if I press, whilst I've got the brush active, if I press Alt, I can select a color. So that will select, so that nice pink bit of his forehead there. And you can see straight away my brush has changed to this color. And then I've got this quite nice big soft brush with 0 hardness, which means it's got very fuzzy edges. Its size is 150 pixels. Its opacity is only 54%. So I can just, you can see on my screen there, I've just subtly sort of filled. Do you see what I mean?
Mm.
Subtly, I've overdone it a bit there to show you, but I'm subtly filling in. I could probably just have done it a bit less and just gone brush. Oops. Actually, let's delete that layer. Layer. Yeah, so just if you just do it a little bit like that, it just, it's going to put in enough color. You're actually, it's almost like applying powder to someone's face, but you can just fill little bits of, do you know what I mean? That's quite subtle, but it's kind of really helpful actually when you take it on and off like that. So that's just using a brush. Select, so brush tool here. When you've got the brush tool active, hold down Alt, click on a color, and that selects that color. And that means you then paint that color. If you go to 100% opacity and a flow of 100 and then choose that color and then paint, you totally just paint that color, which is kind of weird, but you don't have to do that. Okay. Now, makes sense? Yep. Right. Good. So what I was going to do, I'm going to do a kind of a fun thing here, which is selecting a color. Okay, so we're going to go image adjustments, selective color. Okay. Oops, not in that one. Image. What am I doing? Adjustments. Okay, replace color. Okay, replace color. Yeah. Okay. So now what this is going to do. So first of all, I'm going to choose the color to replace that one. And then I'm going to replace, and you can see where that's going to kind of work. And I'm going to replace that color with pink. Okay. But then I can then add and remove extra color. So I want to add in. So if I keep going through and just adding in these extra tones. And you're all saying to me, oh my God, you've gone all over his face and everything. It looks disgusting. But I can either try and take those out like that, which doesn't work that well. So I'm doing it very quickly. You should be a bit more careful what I'm doing. But you know what? Because let's look at his face. That's because he's got some yellowish tones in his face. It's also chosen his face. So what would I do? I know you're all screaming at me, create a mask. So I'm going to create a mask. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to get a brush, which is black. This is, a really good example of where you would do this kind of thing. And I'm going to paint on the mask in black. And look at that. So that totally obliterates the effect that I didn't want to happen, in that area. Do the same on his arm. Again, I'm doing this very quick and dirty kind of way. Yeah, so you can do selective color replacement fairly easily. Again, I've done a very quick and dirty job of it. Yeah, and we've not done it perfectly, but we've, you know, I should have selected in more colors, but I didn't spend that long doing it. And then any sort of corrections I wanted to make, you know, I think we've probably chosen, see, because it's always pulled in this yellow here. Then we just hide it from the areas where we don't necessarily want it to be. Okay. So selective colors are kind of a fun thing to play around with. So brushes, selective colors are a good way of making, you know, yeah, you can see here, I kind of need to correct. Anyway, I'm not going to spend ages, but yeah, so you can play around with, you know, find his, yeah, so, okay, so that was image, adjustments, replace color. And then, yeah, you add in and remove extra colors. And you can, the fuzziness is basically how close or apart the color that you're selecting is. So that's, you know, have a go at finding, you know, you can do that horrible thing with a red bus on a, and turn a red bus green. Why don't you try and do that? That'd be kind of fun. Okay. Yeah, another way to play around with selective color, let me delete that layer, is we can do an adjustment layer, which is it hue saturation? Yeah, okay, look, okay. So this is where I can play with individual colors within the photo. So I can do, you know, the whole picture, saturation, whatever, okay. But I can choose yellows, for example, and I can just play around with the yellows. Yeah, so you can, sometimes I do this with teeth. So you kind of just, you make a selection around the teeth, and then you bring down, you overall brighten up, master, brighten the teeth. I don't want to talk about teeth so much. And then you bring down the saturation of the yellow. So this is a way, you know, again, this is applying to the whole image, but if we just wanted to apply it just to the yellows in his shirt, you would know how to do that now, wouldn't you?
Make a selection.
You make a selection, or we could, because we've got, it's great. Yeah, that is a really good way of doing it. Or so look, I'm bringing all of the yellows down. So let's change his t-shirt to that weird gray color. You know, but I could just get my brush. I mean, actually I can fill, another thing you can do is fill your, if you fill your mask with black. Yeah, so you fill your mask with black, which means I've hidden everything that I did in that adjustment layer. So remember, my adjustment layer was reducing the saturation of all yellows. Okay, so now what I do, if I take my brush and I paint it, make it white on my mask. So I'm not painting gray, I'm painting white on the, I'm painting white onto the mask over the guy's yellow shirt. So that's just there for only applying that effect. You know, even if I go over the blue, that doesn't matter, because remember, my adjustment was to only change the yellows. So there's multiple ways of doing all this stuff, yeah. But you know, this is one way. So you know, I've, you know, with a mask fairly accurately taken all the color out of his yellow shirt, and that was mainly by toning down the yellows in the whole picture, and then applying a mask, turning the mask black, which totally hid the effect of the adjustment, and then painting in white on the mask just to reveal the areas of the, if I delete the mask, yeah, again, you can see the whole picture has lost all the yellows in it, yeah, because remember what I did, and then if I just undo that, I bring it back. Okay, so that mask, so you should understand what this mask means. This adjustment layer is, you know, total desaturation of the yellows. And then the mask is only revealing that desaturation of the yellows through that area that's painted white into that area. So that's just, you know, just again, getting your head around how you can use masks and adjustments to apply to selective parts of the picture only. Okay. Okay. So that's what I want you to play around with this time. So playing around with cloning, I'm going to write all the various bits and bobs that I said down in an email tomorrow. Playing around with cloning and trying out smart fill and working out where and when that doesn't work. Playing around with, sometimes you're trying to clone around the edge of a curved, maybe there's a curved edge, something you're trying to adjust the angle of the cloning brush. That's an interesting, playing around with the difference between when you're in cloning of normal versus replace, and also darken and lighten are kind of common ones to, clone only dark or light pixels can be quite useful. Look at the different filters. So remember filter, Zoom is getting in the way of what I want to do. Hold on. Okay. Filter. So we need a selection. Remember, you've got to have something selected. Filter. Excuse me. Play around with different blur. Often for, you can, you could. I often use blur, like you blur the whole photo a little bit. So anyway, there's lots of them. I'm not going to go through them all now. So if, say, you've got a kind of a messy, should I just do it really quickly? I'll show you. I won't show you. Okay, you can do it if you have it. So you can do, you can do a filter which is dust and scratches. So if something you've got like a messy kind of white background, for example, and you do filter noise, dust and scratches, it kind of, you can choose how much dust and scratches to remove from, a messy white background, and it will just blur them all out and even them, and then you can then create a mask to make sure it doesn't, that filter doesn't apply to the person in the foreground, for example. So, have a play around with filters and masking filters. Does that make sense? And also play around with filters, creating layers from selections and then applying filters to the new selections that you have made. I'm just going to, I can't resist showing you. I'm going to have to show you this. Hold on a second. Okay. I need to find a person with, if I've got a person with slightly fuzzy hair, let me find this person. This is quite a good, easy example. Where is she? Where is she? Where is she? Sorry, one sec. Okay, so here we are. Okay, I think this is it. Okay. Yeah, okay. So so again, it's just applying the same principles that we've kind of, okay, so can you see a lady with Zava written down behind her? Yeah, okay. So look, this is kind of annoying because she has got, one of the, she's got a few frizzy hairs out the top there, yeah? That's kind of a bit annoying. So let's go layer, let's go layer, duplicate layer, just so we know what we're doing. Okay. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to apply a filter, noise, dust and scratches. Okay. I want to have a look at the top of the head. Okay. So, you can choose, what's the radius of the, see how I go to radius? If I bring up the radius, anything with a radius of more than 16 pixels is now being blurred out. Can you see? So the top of the head goes from that, and then, yeah, so now I've kind of blurred it out. Threshold is again another way of just adjusting. That's okay. So yeah, so you can see I've blurred out the distance. This is the dust and scratches filter. So it's kind of removing, it's considering stray hairs to be scratches. So any dust and scratches, okay. But obviously when I apply that, now when I zoom in, she's all blurry, isn't she? Which is not good. But the Zava sign and the background were blurry anyway, so it's fine. But all I need to do then is create a layer mask and hide. Just take my brush in black. Yeah, you can see how painting black over that mask hides that mask. I'm not going to do it really, I'm going to do it quite quickly, but so basically, and then all I need to do is just, be a bit careful around her head. Maybe we'll bring the hardness up a little bit and make the brush a bit smaller. Whoops. Okay. So, just kind of, so you can see what I've done. I've kind of like basically
returned it to where it was.
Yeah, but I'm not, you know, I'm going to make a
Yeah.
mistake now. I'm going to, if I go over there, I bring all that back. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? But I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to undo that. Yeah. So by painting black on the layer mask, so the mask is over the filter and I'm hiding, you know, by painting black on it, I'm removing the mask from, I'm removing the filter effect because I'm painting it black within that mask, and I've kind of revealed her, and it's kind of, but I've left it active, visible, the filter effect in that fuzzy bit of her hair. Anyway, people moan about fuzzy hairs on their head, so I have to get rid of them. Okay, so yeah, so that's, again, it's not teaching that specific thing, it's just trying to get you through how you can apply effects and filters and things to specific areas of your images. Yeah.
Okay. Actually, that can be very useful for something I'm working on at the moment, so I'll give that a whirl.
Yeah, so apply the filter. The filter will apply to the whole image, and then you can think of how you want to then, you know, remove the filter effects. So with a mask, okay, so a mask over the layer that's had the filter applied to it. Yeah, and then you can play around with how much it is revealed back. Okay, and I can actually do a thing. If I press backslash, yeah, I can see where I've put my brush. So I have to do a bit more there. Okay, so that just helps me a little bit. Okay, okay. See, I'm doing the stupid thing. I'm painting on the layer rather than the mask, which is something that's really silly to do. Okay, but anyway, so make sure you're on the mask. Make sure you're on the mask when you paint this. Yeah, the black and the white. Okay. Whatever. Okay, I don't need to go over that. Okay, and then press backslash again to hide away that. Okay, fine. Okay. So let me stop. Let's stop the screen share. Okay, fine. Okay.
Yeah.
So quite a bit of ground then, hopefully. But again, one thing that I mainly want to emphasize on that is, you now can make selections and you can understand what a mask does, and you can create layers from selections, and you can adjust selections individually. That's all quite easy. And you can apply filters, and you can know how to hopefully apply them to different things. But it's thinking a little bit about the philosophy and your approach of, I want to make the sky more blurry in this picture. How am I going to do that? Am I going to mask? Am I going to apply? How am I going to do that? Basically, do you know what I mean? I'm going to create a new layer, apply the filter to that layer, and then bring my other photo back with the cutout transparent pixels back on top. Or am I going to use a mask to do it? There's often more than one way to change the same effects, but it's really having a think around what you're actually, planning what you're going to do, and kind of just working that stuff out actually. Because actually some of the tools, when you get to know them, we've not spoken about many complicated tools in Photoshop. We've spoken about really adjustments, making adjustments. We've spoken about layers. There's loads of different adjustment layers which you can play around with, which you probably understand, don't you? Like contrast, exposure, all that sort of stuff. But it's how to put it all together to make what you want to happen to your image happen, basically.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So yeah, I'll send you a couple of things to play around with. But yeah, really what I want you to practice is creating layers from selections, applying filters to those new layers, and then playing around with the smart fill thing. You can see smart fill doesn't always work. It did a really bad job for me, obviously, but then you can work out another way of doing it yourself, hopefully.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah, lots to practice.
Yeah. So I'll write a summary, which will probably take me 4 hours tomorrow morning. But yeah, I'll write a brief summary by an email, and then just say, okay, try doing this and that, and I'll send you a recording as well. Could
you just, if you have time, just do a quick summary of how to bring in more than one photo into the...
Yeah, I'll do that now. Okay, so we go back to Photoshop. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring this. Let's delete out this. So this, let's say, okay, so this is the photo. So let's say this is my target photo that I want to bring a new photo into.
We can't see your screen.
Sorry, I need to share my screen again. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So I'm just going to grab the layer.
Yeah.
Drag it into the photo that I want it's going to. You see, it's there now.
Oh, right.
So I took the, so this is the, so let's delete it out.
Right.
There.
was
So
doing it
you
all
have your
around.
two, you open both of your images in, there's other ways of doing it, which is the one I find the most simplest. You have both of your images open in Photoshop as two separate tabs.
Yes.
And then you go, okay, I want to put another picture into this picture here. I go into the picture I want to bring in. It doesn't work if you use it from here. You take it from the layers panel.
Yep.
Drag it up to the top, and then you just, I think you can drop it there as well. Oh no, you can't do that. Okay, so you have to take it in and drop it on top. Yeah, okay, so you actually have to physically drop it on top of the picture in the middle, not into the layers panel on the right.
Right, thank you. Okay, I think I was trying to do it the wrong way around. I was going from the top. Yeah, okay, thank you. Got it.
So make sure, so make sure, you're any of the layer in this picture, you drag it in across there.
Okay, I'll give that a whirl. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay,
Right.
guys.
Yep. See you next week.
Hopefully.
Thank you.
Okay. See you later.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.